welcome to Wellness Starts from the Inside Out, Building a Sustainable Family Law Practice. I am Ryan Wedeking, co-chair of Beverly Hills Bar Association's Family Law Section. The Family Law Section is sponsored by White Zuckerman, Lawyers Mutual, SoberLink, and Our Family Wizard. White Zuckerman provides a wide variety of resources to complete almost any project, large or small. They also provide traditional accounting and tax practice services. We invite you to contact them to discuss your specific accounting needs and learn how they can be of service to you. Learn more at wzwlh.com. SoberLink provides objective real-time data that can be used to reduce disputes over alcohol consumption, leading to less conflict in custody cases. To help ensure smoother negotiations for a more efficient legal process, consider using SoberLink's trusted alcohol monitoring system to eliminate hearsay and protect your client's best interests. With an unprecedented combination of features, including advanced reporting, facial recognition, tamper resistance, real-time results, and customized testing, the discrete system has been the leader in remote alcohol monitoring since 2011. Learn more at soberlink.com. For 5 decades, Lawyers Mutual Insurance Company has been the only California-based company to continuously provide lawyers throughout the state with professional liability insurance coverage. Their experience and expertise are complemented by the fact that LMIC is directed by a group of dedicated lawyers. They offer special rates with competitive premiums for a wide range of areas of practice, including family law. Learn more at lawyersmutual.com. Last but not least, Our Family Wizard is a co-parenting platform designed to help families communicate more effectively, reduce conflict, and create reliable court-admissible records. Features like tone meter, AI, shared calendars, expense tracking, and in-app audio and video calling help support compliance leads to better outcomes for families navigating custody matters. Lastly, I will do a plug for our monthly Beverly Hills Bar Association Family Law Section meetings. Those are on the third Wednesday of each month. So if I'm calculating this correctly, I think our next meeting will be August 19th at 4:30 p.m. Please join us. It's a great opportunity to network with colleagues and also get the State of Department 2 from Judge Kaufman. So please join us. Now, I am delighted to introduce our speakers for today, Rebekah Frye, Elena Gonzalez, Dr. Mary Lund, and the Honorable Vanessa Zecher. Dr. Lund is a clinical psychologist with over 25 years of experience mediating divorce and family disputes, more than 600 custody evaluations completed, and over a decade in a collaborative divorce group, making her one of Los Angeles' most experienced psychologists specializing in divorce. After earning her Ph.D. from UCLA, go Bruins, and conducting postdoctoral research on children and divorce at the University of Cambridge, she has published widely on children's post-divorce adjustment, and with her husband, Inga Strawn, helped develop the SCARF assessment tool for evaluating families from a child's perspective. A respected educator and leader in her field, she has taught at UCLA, Pepperdine University School of Law, and the Southern California Family Therapy Institute, and has held leadership roles with the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts in the Los Angeles County Family Law LACBA Family Law Section. Next, Rebekah Frye is a certified family law specialist with nearly 30 years of experience handling complex, high-conflict family law matters, including custody litigation, domestic violence cases involving coerced control, and sophisticated financial disputes such as fiduciary breaches and high net worth asset division. A court-appointed children's representative for over 2 decades, she brings deep expertise in crafting individualized parenting plans, particularly for neurodiverse children and highly polarized custody disputes. A fellow of the AAML and holder of an LLM in taxation, Rebekah combines strategic precision with specialized skill in navigating the most challenging property and business valuation issues. Next, Elena Gonzalez is a licensed psychotherapist with 20 years experience working with children, families, and adults. Her areas of expertise include infants and mothers, parenting, children, adolescents, families, women's issues, divorce issues, co-parenting, trauma, and anxiety. Moderating our program today will be the Honorable Vanessa Zecher. Judge Zecher brings over 20 years of experience as an attorney and judge to her ADR practice at JAMS with deep expertise in family law, including high asset property division, financial support, and child custody, as well as complex civil and criminal matters, having presided over multiple jury trials, including 2 capital cases. A dedicated advocate for alternative dispute resolution, she has conducted countless judicially supervised settlement conferences and arbitrations, empowering parties to resolve disputes efficiently and take control of their own outcomes. Prior to the bench, Judge Zecher founded her own family law firm, served as a court-appointed arbitrator and mediator, and was honored for her outstanding contributions to the Santa Clara County Family Court and her pro bono service in federal court. And now let's get started.
Brian, thank you very much for those kind words. I think I speak for all of us on this panel. We're excited to be here today. This presentation is a bit different from the presentations I think everybody normally attends. Most of our MCLE is about what we can do for others. Today, our focus is going to be what we can do for ourselves. So we are going to move back and forth between the slides, and we're going to do so rather fluidly and liberally. So the slides are there to keep all of you and all of us anchored, but we may deviate every now and then from the actual slide. So Suzanne, we can move to the next slide, please. So part of the focus of what we want to talk about today is how we don't just survive as family law practitioners and professionals, but we want to be thriving. And so we're going to look at several different areas, both from a legal perspective and also from a mental health perspective. And so we're going to look at areas of wellness, self-care, boundaries, stress management, and what a positive work environment can contribute to how we manage our practices. Next slide, please. All right. So Rebekah, from your side as a family law practitioner, why does all of this matter? And Suzanne, we can just go off slide for a moment.
Speaking from my own practice, and I'm sure many of the practitioners that are on this webinar today, we deal with people at their absolute worst. These are good people who really are at traumatic life events and junctures in their life. And as the person who is oftentimes their first line of defense to the legal forum, we have a tendency to take on that stress. We want to solve problems for people. We want to help make their lives right. We want to be their champions. We want to guide them through the legal process. And when we take on all of that as a practitioner for not just one person, but for 30, 40, however many clients that we are representing at one time, that can cumulatively take a major toll on our health. And that's why it's important. That's why I think this conversation is such an important one to have.
Elena, do you think you could start us off with an understanding of what chronic stress is and what it does to us?
Sure. Chronic stress is, I think we all know it, when we're sort of tired and cranky and don't want to go to work, which is a little bit different from compassion fatigue, which we can discuss later. But when we're sort of just, I know for me, it's when I start to get impatient with clients. It's a bad sign. I need a day off. But let me explain the stress model to you. So stress, you guys, we all have a lot of stress, especially in the type of clients that you work with if you're in family law. So the stress cycle works with, we perceive, our brain, our nervous system perceives a threat, right? A client yells at you because they're having a very bad moment. They're crying, they're carrying on, they're upset. And so your brain, your amygdala, senses a threat. So it goes into a stress response and it goes into the amygdala, which goes into fight, flight, or freeze, right? So we all have a go-to. We have to know what our go-to is. Mine is fight. I will fight you, right? Some people will freeze and not move and turtle, and some people will run. They'll just avoid. So we have to know what our threat response is. So after our nervous system receives a threat, the hypothalamus releases all these lovely chemicals to prepare us to fight, flight, or freeze, right? And typically the ones that are really bad for us are cortisol and adrenaline. Our body gets flooded, and this is the problem with chronic stress, that if we don't deal with it, that cortisol and that adrenaline start to do a lot of long-term damage to our body. And what happens is, I think as attorneys, I think it's different from a therapist because people usually aren't as upset with us demanding that we do something immediately. But what happens with your nervous system is that you're in a sort of chronic, consistent low state of hypervigilance, which keeps your stress response on, which is not good and has significant long-term effects. The reason that you all manage is because you all have self-regulatory skills. You know, Dan Siegel, he's a very well-known psychiatrist out of UCLA, talks about flipping your lid, right? He talks about the reason why you don't flip your lid is when you sort of lose it is because you all know how to manage your emotions. But it doesn't mean that you know how to manage your nervous system and how to release all that incoming stress that is ongoing and that is bad for our bodies. So that's where we can move into talking about some stuff. But I really want to talk about a little bit before we do that, some of the long-term impacts of stress. It impacts our cognitive functioning. It impacts decision making, which you guys are making decisions all day, every day, sometimes fast, on your feet, in court. It impacts our memory and concentration. It really, really interrupts that, right? Which then increases all our emotional responses. It impacts our frustration tolerance, our irritability. It can increase fear. It can increase sadness. And that's all the lovely cortisol. What it does when it's just coursing and coursing and coursing. The other thing, cortisol has a lot of long-term impact and cumulative impact on our body, on hypertension. We also talk about the cortisol band, which is that lovely little roll that we develop around our midsection, that if you can't lose that, and you've been trying to lose it, if you're not in menopause and you're a woman, that's different. But if you've been trying to lose that, that's where the cortisol band accumulates. And if we don't figure out ways how to release that from our nervous system, from our body, it's a continuous impact on our body and our nervous system and all those important areas of functioning that I just talked about.
I think also I've read some literature on the impact of stress and those chemicals in creating potential for cancer. It's that serious. I'm not an expert in that area, of course, but I think it's quite serious, as you've set out. Mary, could I turn to you and ask you a kind of a compound question?
All right.
First, can you describe for us the type of personality, lawyer personality, that might be attracted to the world of family law? And then the second question is going to be, why do we have more difficulty managing stress or not taking it on perhaps than others?
Well, one thing that I think it's important for attorneys to start out with, I mean, we're going to be talking about boundaries. And let's start with our emotional boundaries, just how we see ourselves and how we see our clients. And it's very difficult in family law because we have to be empathic to be a good professional. And I sort of feel like I'm a cross between the legal and the psychological because I've been a custody evaluator for actually 30-ish years. And I don't know how many evaluations I've done. So I feel like I have to play a different professional role when I was a custody evaluator than as a therapist. And we have to be empathic and not just treat our clients like bugs under a microscope. We have to be good at this. We need to understand we're not so different from them. Lots of us have gotten divorced, right? So we have to have professional empathy. And what happens is there's probably a reason that we are drawn to family law, that we chose this profession. And it's important for us to know our vulnerabilities. We need to think for a bit, like, why did you get into this? What is it about? Maybe you are a drama junkie. I mean, I myself realize I like I like working with attorneys. I like working I liked going to court for a while. I mean, there's a reason that people watch medical dramas and courtroom dramas, because there's a way that's it gives us a zing, or that somebody's drawn to being an ER doctor. But or maybe you are the kind of person who wants to take care of people. Maybe so you need to look at that. And what is it that then tempts you to cross that boundary from your professional role into wanting to do even more for people, or to take on more than you can do, to stay up late at night and work, or your perfectionism, to stay up late at night because you have to be the best at what you do and you not get your sleep. We're there, I think, to guide and advise, not to become somebody's best friend. Even though we use our empathy and there is a personal relationship aspect to it, it's the client's lives, it's the client's decisions in the long run. And even though you need to control your clients when they are in Judge Zecher's courtroom and not let them scream and cry. And it's always, I really liked having bailiffs in courtrooms. I don't know about the rest of you, because this is as raw and personal as it can get in family law. People really have had huge losses, huge trauma. And so it bleeds onto us. And I think I'll just stop there so I'm sure this will come up again.
Can I say a little tidbit about words? Because I know we talked about it in our prep, and Mary,
Please.
you just said the word that we had discussed. Judge Zecher does have to control her courtroom, but we talked about that. I think, Rebekah, you were talking about controlling clients, or how attorneys use that word. So I did a little research afterwards, because I know that, there's the whole theory of nonviolent communication, and words actually do matter, and they do land in our nervous system, and they can trigger our stress response and the fight, flight, or freeze. So even when we're thinking about it, even if we're not saying it out loud, we know that when we're saying words internally, it does impact that whole system again. So the words that we say do matter. So we want to guide our clients. We want to, Mary and I were going back with a lot of synonyms about what words we could say, but it does actually activate the amygdala again into fight, flight, or freeze. So I really just want to leave that again, because words do matter and do impact our nervous system.
And I want to throw in that there's an ethical responsibility, and we have a slide on that, to take this wellness thing seriously. Because if you don't do it, you are not going to serve. It's not just you're not going to serve yourself, you're not going to serve your clients well.
I think having to redirect behavior, let's get away from the word control and talk about the behavior. I think really having to redirect behavior in another human being on any level, as judge, attorney, doctor, therapist, whatever the issue is, very difficult, correct, Elena? And I think it really creates stress both in the person who's required to do the redirecting, as well as the person who is being redirected. And it really creates this push-pull. And I honestly think, as lawyers and practitioners and therapists and judges in this area, that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, is redirecting behavior, and you hope you're making the right call. And that in and of itself, I think, creates a lot of stress. Rebekah, if I turn to you and I say, speaking for family law practitioners, do you intuit the difference between burnout and stress, both on a personal level and perhaps in what you might observe in some of our colleagues?
It took me a long time to really recognize between the two. I think a lot of practitioners who do high conflict, especially if they do litigation as opposed to maybe mediation or collaborative law, if that is the area of your focus, it took me a long time to figure out how to identify what was true burnout versus what was just stress, because I felt like my daily life from Monday morning at 9 o'clock till Friday evening at 6 o'clock, or whatever the work hours were, was stress. That's what I lived. And it took me some time to kind of figure out when I was becoming irritable with my staff, when I was becoming irritable with my family, when I was not looking forward to getting up and going to work in the morning, or things were just not clicking for me. And now that it took me, I've been practicing for 31 years this November, and it took me probably 20 of those years to figure out really what I needed to do to help manage my own stress and to let go of that control word, not only about my practice environment and my office environment, but how it was affecting members of my family when I couldn't control the level of stress that I was experiencing.
Suzanne, would you mind putting up slide 6, please? And I might turn to Mary and or Elena to help us with some of these signs. And in particular, the sort of, are these always related to burnout? Are they sometimes related just to stress? Is it a degree? We're trying to help our practitioners sort of identify when there may be a little more elevated concern than just a bad day.
Elena?
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I'm actually going to start where and emphasize what Rebekah said. I think when you have burnout, all of your relationships suffer. And I think that one of the slides talked about cynicism. You just don't care anymore. There's an element of I must keep going, I must keep going. And it's that it's even worse than not enjoying your work. It's kind of that there's a dread. So it takes over your whole life. And a lot of people feel like they're trapped or they need to make a radical change. Like people do geographics, they move or they quit, they go, I need to do something else. When maybe it's really not that you have to make a drastic change in your life. You need to learn how to manage stress, and you just haven't been doing it. You're so focused on the achievement or being there for others, and it's almost like bottoming out in terms of some of us are addicted to work, we're addicted to getting that high that comes from feeling like we're doing a good job. And so you get to a point where your life has become unmanageable, sort of.
And Mary, I would jump in if you start to notice an increase in recreational drug use, alcohol, porn, gaming, anything that is taking you to numbing out, right?
Numbing, yeah.
If you used to do it a little bit before, but now, I have clients tell me, oh my God, I was gaming last night for 5 hours. I was like, where was your family? That's a sign. So if you start to notice an increase, you're avoiding something, and you need to look at that.
And I wanted to say something just as you were talking about that made me think about the client interactions. Sometimes we're talking about general burnout for practitioners in the practice, but it can also be client-centered. You find yourself so engrossed in a particular client's matter that you get to the point where you simply don't care about that client anymore. They are frustrating you. You're ready to move on before you get there. So it's not just the total practice. It can be focused at one particular client as well, and you feel like you need to just move on. Recognizing that is going to help preserve that client relationship, and it's going to help you move on to other matters that may also need your attention. So I think that that's like the stress within the stress, if you would.
Well, I think lawyers in particular, judges as well, we are the keeper of secrets. We do not have a lot of place to put the stressors that we are experiencing with the client. There are so many privileges, things we cannot talk about, things we are not allowed to share. And so I think our release valve is a little bit different, which in turn can create a lot of stress. I think, Mary, I come back to a point you made that I think is incredibly well taken, which is that I spent a lot of time talking with folks about filters. How are you viewing the world today? What is your filter? And some days, if you are tired, it is a highly cynical, very impatient world. Someone could say good morning to you, and if they don't say it with the right tone, you are going to receive it poorly. Other days, people can say whatever they want. They can be as, recalcitrant as they wish, and it's fine. Today is a good day because that's the filter. I think self-care becomes really critical in terms of the filter that you bring to the table with the responsibilities that you have. And I was fond of saying when I used to teach judges pretty regularly at Judicial College, I would say your own house has to be in order before you go and help clean someone else's house, period. And so if we are not taking care of ourselves, our filter is not going to be helpful. And actually, rather than solving the problems, we become part of the problem. And so this puts even more pressure on us. I feel like even as I'm saying it, it puts even more pressure on us. Mary, I know you're going to help me reframe that, I think.
Oh, well, I mean, that is the reason for doing the work a little bit on yourself. I'm not saying everybody has to go into therapy, but I think that you have to understand your own vulnerabilities in terms of maybe you're doing to like just recognizing your own limits, saying, okay, I want to be the perfect mother. I want to be the everybody's best friend. I want to be there for everybody. And then you realize you cannot do it all. And so something's got to give. So it's setting limits, not just with your work, but maybe other parts of your life and getting hold of your own grandiosity so that, and to say, yes, I'd like to spend more time with doing this or that, but taking the 5 minutes to give yourself a chance to have a cup of coffee by yourself in the morning or before you go home to have a little bit of a break before you deal with your children or deal with your spouse. Because until you actually focus a little on yourself and do that inventory before you go and are there for other people, then you may just say, I'm not at my best today. Like before you go on the bench, Your Honor, you might realize you've got a cold.
Yes.
Or you didn't
or
get
a
enough.
headache or a migraine.
Yeah,
Or,
you
yes,
didn't have enough, you didn't
that's
get
right.
enough sleep last night.
That's right.
Recognize it. Do some self-monitoring and go, I'm particularly vulnerable today, and I'm going to need to pause a little bit more. Or maybe I pay attention to not the court reporter's sign of fatigue, but my own sign of fatigue for when I take a break. Am I answering your question?
You are, but yes, very much so. I love the change in perspective. I reflect back. Many people know I lost my husband when I was actually on public court. He passed away, and I remember going into court after he passed away, and I thought to myself, I may not be my best version of myself. I don't know. But interestingly, Mary, I should have maybe turned that inward and said, I'm sad, all the things that may go along with it. I didn't. I turned it outward. And here was my thought. I thought, well, people come to court. It is not their problem that I have lost my husband. I am required to provide the exact same level of, I'm going to call it service for lack of a better term, but the exact same level of service with or without this sort of trauma that I was experiencing. In some ways, I wish I had turned it inward a little bit more. I think your way may have been slightly healthier.
Well, but I think by the way, going through grief, you may want to go back and do something of service because it can help you focus outside yourself.
True. That's a good point. Good point.
But the point I think you were making is the filter. No, you recognize the filter. What is it you bring to this day?
That's right. And that filter is a big deal. And kind of importantly, we can change it.
Yeah.
Right? We can change the conversation if we really want to.
Yeah.
All right. Could we move on to slide 8, please, Suzanne, which is why family law attorneys are especially vulnerable. And I think, Mary and Elena, we were going to talk a little bit, especially about triggers and secondary trauma. from a psychological perspective. And then Rebekah, I'm going to turn to you from a practical perspective on how to work with those issues. Suzanne, we can take the slide down. I think we've gotten kind of a list. So Mary or Elena, I'll start either one of you. So triggers, secondary trauma, how to recognize a trigger, and how to process secondary trauma.
Elena.
Well, I think we're then talking a little bit about compassion fatigue, right? The difference between regular stress and compassion fatigue is compassion fatigue is really when it stems from absorbing emotional pain, grief, or trauma from someone else, secondary trauma, which is exactly what the position that attorneys are in, healthcare providers, therapists. And it typically only happens with people who are caring. Like, it doesn't happen to the postman, right? The postman is not, or postwoman, postperson, isn't holding someone else's emotional pain and feelings for them. And I think that's a really poor distinction, because you can have exhaustion and fatigue regular from any job, long hours, you had to, do a lot of manual labor, you had just, regular work stuff. But this is different when we are constantly absorbing that emotional pain or physical pain or suffering and having to hold that space, to hold that space, to hold that space. We really need to understand, and I think as attorneys, you don't even realize that you're doing, especially in family law, you're doing it every day, every day, every day. And when and can you notice, is your bucket full? Can you notice? Can you notice that you're starting to feel numb, that the stories don't affect you, that you're impatient when they're telling you, that you wish that they would stop crying, even though they just found awful news about their partner who's leaving them. When you start to feel disconnected, that's a big, big sign. When you start to numb out and you don't want to hear the stories, when again, and we're going back to some of those other signs of are you starting to have difficulty focusing? Are you having difficulty sleeping? Are you thinking about clients' stories sometimes too much at night before you go to sleep? Are you starting to have more headaches? Are you starting to have increased conflict in your own personal relationships because you're so irritable and you're just snapping at everybody? And if that's not your baseline, or someone is telling you, a partner or a spouse, hey, you've been really cranky, it's a moment to pause, and do an inventory like we were just talking about. That's the second person who told me I've been cranky lately. And I haven't slept in 2 weeks, right? So really taking the time to notice, or to be able to hear if we're getting that feedback, noticing, I used to work out every other day. I haven't worked out in a month. Wow, I'm drinking 4 cups of coffee within 2 hours in the morning when I used to have 2 cups of coffee a day. So all these things may not seem like anything, but cumulative, it is your body telling you are beyond exhausted, right? And we need to start doing something about it. Go ahead, Mary. It sounds like you were going to say something.
Well, beyond the fact that we deal with domestic violence and sexual abuse allegations and the kinds of abductions, I mean, things that are just beyond what is normally experienced in life, we have to recognize that divorce is on that stress index. Most people have heard about that life stress index. It is the second most traumatic experience, only after death of a spouse. And usually anybody who's going through divorce is also having multiple crises at the same time. You guys know only too well, financial, having to move, things like that. So, but let's just go to what the clients are experiencing. They are experiencing the loss of the most intimate attachment in their lives and a betrayal. So these people that we deal with every day, let's say even the ones that are just a normal, typical divorce, these are extremely traumatized people. And it may be the most horrific thing they ever go through in their lives. And, Bill Eddy, I recommend Bill Eddy's book. It's in in the materials, Dealing with High Conflict People. And he defines high conflict people as well, he talks about different categories of high conflict people. And really, what he's talking about are character disorders. Oh, by the way, we get those too. I mean, as hard as it is to deal with people in trauma, we also get very difficult people. And they may be people who are used to bullying, and getting their way because it works, or they're very dependent and they trap us with their helplessness and they're wanting us to take care of them, or they're emotional anyway in their regular lives and they become super emotional. But normal everyday people going through a divorce are going to have these character disorder like traits. It takes 2 years for people really to recover. So we get people in their most traumatized, most acting out state. And so Eddie has some tips on we have in here how to say no professionally. It's also how to set a limit professionally. And dealing with people who are traumatized or who are difficult, you have to pay them attention. He calls it empathy. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, read his book. But basically, it's you have to handle them. You have to handle the emotion first, and then you set your limit, or then you assert yourself. So when we're talking about what do we do with the special vulnerability, what do we do with these clients? I think we need to learn how to set our limits, set our boundaries, handle whatever goes on in the courtroom in a way that shows compassion, but also I'm this it's like I care about you, but this behavior needs to stop.
Before we get to Rebekah on this, either Mary or Elena, can you talk about, we didn't talk about this in our prep, but it has occurred to me, the concept of healthy detachment, loving detachment, if you will. Can you talk about that? I employ that as a tool. Sometimes I say, did not create this problem.
Right.
I was not consulted about this problem. And I am trying to solve the problem in the best way that I know how. But at the end of the day, it is not my problem. Can you help us with the concept of detachment? And then Rebekah, I'm going to come to you and ask you about if you ever feel triggered by a story, or do you experience vicarious trauma without being too personal? That's not the point. But do you feel that as a practitioner? So we can start with Mary and Elena, I think, on detachment, healthy, loving detachment.
I call it zooming out. I talk about this for myself. It's a zoom out, and I'm still staying in my prefrontal cortex, my rational brain. So even all those emotions are coming at me. I'm noticing them, but I'm like, oh, okay, this is a lot. I'm going to zoom out, and this isn't about me, right? This person is having something very difficult happening to them right now, and I'm just here. It's not mine, right? I'm very clear about it's not mine. But I think when we can't say that and that starts to get blurred, I think it's when we start to get stressed out and get the compassion fatigue. But it is very healthy, I think, Judge Zecher, to what you're saying. This isn't mine. That's really healthy. That is super healthy. Not mine. That's okay, right? And then I think we can stay in the prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking brain, and be like, because then we don't get caught up in the emotions, we don't get hijacked. Then we can be like, okay, especially for attorneys, you have to strategize, right? You have to But before you can get there, you have to really be aware of not getting hijacked by all the emotion that is coming in.
Elena, if you can move a tiny bit closer to your microphone, I think that might be a little bit helpful, okay?
I can turn it
Mary, perfect. Thank you so much. Mary, anything to add to that?
Well, this we're going to talk about mindfulness
Right.
and meditation. Okay, so all right, attorneys, don't get freaked out when we say mindfulness, or it's not woo woo. You know, it really isn't.
There's
But
science behind
there's
it.
science behind it. It works. Okay, part of mindfulness is exactly what Elena's talking about, which is to become the observer or to observe when something's happening to you. You become your own observer in a way. You go, this is happening. I'm observing this is happening. I'm yes, my body is doing this. I'm observing that my body is freaking out. I'm observing this happening. And I'm thinking about it. I'm letting it happen. And so, one of the things, and by the way, I could do a lot better job with this a lot of the time. I'm going to go do a session today, a co-parenting session where they're going to yell at each other. And I'm going to do what Elena's talking about and observe this and think, I'm here. It's not me. I can't control what they're doing today to each other. I'm going to observe this. And when you do that, something also it lowers the stress in you. That's the detach. So I guess you could call it detachment, but I would call it, I guess, not leaving the room, not leaving them, but not letting their emotion flood you.
And
Yes, so I add the word loving before
Loving.
intentionally,
Yeah.
because I don't want to create the perception that it's almost apathetic. That's
Yeah.
not the issue. It's
Yeah.
really, I don't want to become part of the problem.
Right.
I want
Right.
I want to remain in the role of trying to help
Right.
solve the problem.
Right.
And Judge Zecher, I want to go back and say something about stress. Let's not forget that some stress is good because it's a motivator and it
Yes.
gets us going, right? There's actually a scientific word for it, which I can't remember right now. And I really want to remind all of us that our body knows how to do big feelings. The same sensations that we feel when we're terrified are the same sensations that we feel when we're excited.
Yep.
So our body knows how to process this. I always use the example of the roller coaster. Our body knows how to do that. We're yelling, we're screaming, we're like, yay. Those are the same exact sensations when we're scared. So our body knows how to do that if we honor it and we guide it.
Rebekah, any of this resonating or like me? I have to say, I had a bit of a reaction on the mindfulness. I'm like, I barely have time to breathe most of the time. So I love the way it was phrased. Any thoughts on that?
So I have a couple of thoughts of different things that we've been talking about. When we were talking about why family law attorneys are so vulnerable to being, falling into these roles of lacking self-care. If you think about what we do, especially if we litigate, every time we walk into the courtroom, almost every time, it is a life or death issue for the client. It is a custody issue. It is a
Right.
domestic violence issue. It is a support or financial issue. And that client feels like their life is going to end or take a material turn one direction or the other, depending on the work that we do. And we're the only mouthpiece standing up there fighting for these clients. And so it's almost impossible to think that we don't have some vested interest in the things that we're doing. And especially if we are, you made me think about all the time and work and energy that you put into writing a brief and how hard it is to separate that judicial decision that your honor might make either for or against that brief that we've written and not take that personally as a professional. You're thinking, well, yeah, it was the client's issues, but I spent 17 hours on this thing and I quoted everything. And so that's being able to recognize and disentangle yourself from that process, but then looking to things that trigger. I mean, oh my gosh, I certainly, we've all had life experiences and we all bring them with us into our careers. And it is inevitable that we are going to run into a client with which we personally identify with what their experiences may have been. I know, for example, I work with Lisa Fuentes quite a bit in coercive control issues, and I know that she, from her books, was a victim of coercive control. And so I can understand that triggering piece of where you meet that client and you're like, oh my gosh, like this sounds like me, or it sounds like something that I would do. I think the problem for a lot of attorneys and why we have these requirements within our professional continuing education to take these seminars that talk about addiction, that talk about self-care, is because we often forget to do it. Uh, and we find ourselves in a situation where we have gone down a pathway that we don't really want to be down anymore. And then where do we turn to get the help to get out of that pathway? I've had several colleagues of mine who have experienced, addiction, whether it's through drug or alcohol or some other addictive behavior. And who do you turn to for help? Because recognizing that you have a problem or recognizing that you need help, being able to be responsible for your own self-care, who do you turn to when everybody is depending upon you? So I think it's important to start recognizing these things. And I, like you, Judge Zecher, mindfulness, I can't even call it mediation. I always call it mediation instead of meditation. That's how bad I am about whether I can do it or not. But someone told me a long time ago that, meditation doesn't have to be sitting in a quiet room doing calm language. It can be taking a walk outside for 20 or 30 minutes. It can be where my mediation or my meditation is in the gym at 7 o'clock every morning for an hour lifting heavy things. And during that hour, nobody bothers me. I don't think about anything having to do with my career. I just know that I've got to pick up that bar and I've got to lift heavy stuff. And it is so gratifying to have that outlet and to be able to find that 1 hour. And it doesn't have to be an hour if you can't find it. Sometimes it has to start small and work into where you develop a habit. There's a book called Atomic Habits, which I would highly recommend. It's an amazing book to read for someone who does this kind of work because it teaches you how to build a healthy habit and how long it takes to build a habit. Start small. And the more you enjoy doing something, the more you're going to do it. And the more you're going to realize that you need to build that into what you're doing every day, because you will not be able to continue to do the hard things if you are not taking care of yourself.
So I would also make a pitch that we do need to be careful with triggers and stress and all of these other issues, because those can lead to problems in our world, lawyers and judges, of confirmatory bias. So if you're triggered by something and you're triggered by an event, an experience that you've had, you if you're not careful, you necessarily put your own experience and mix it with the experience that you're trying to manage. And confirmatory bias, implicit bias, subconscious bias, all of that, very much a danger in that area. So when we come back to Mary, who is fond of saying it is an ethical obligation to provide for self-care, if nothing else, that should give everybody a motivation. May we talk about setting healthy client boundaries? And I would like to put the slide up for this because I think I'm going to ask Rebekah to lead us in this discussion. And then Mary and Elena, then we're going to go to some practical stress management type things, including the dreaded mediation/meditation word that Rebekah was talking about. So let's talk about setting some boundaries from the lawyer's perspective and things that can actually be done. Rebekah, do you give your cell number to your clients?
Yes.
Do you give your personal cell number to your clients?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay, Mary, what do you think about that? We can't tell.
Let me reframe this. Back when I first started practicing 31 years ago, there wasn't really the idea that you had a cell phone for work and a cell phone for business. So mine has evolved over time in that sense. But I also know not to pick it up. And I also know when things go to voicemail. And if it is after a certain hour, that's the beauty of caller ID is I'm like, nope, not that one. So, but I absolutely do in my workplace world now promote for, members of my staff, don't give out your cell phone. There are certain times where there's an exception for a particular reason, if necessary. But if I had to do it over again, I would absolutely have a personal cell phone and a cell phone for work that you could just put in a drawer when the day was over. I think setting these healthy client boundaries are really important. And even if it means that uh, you have to be careful not to make exceptions, because if you continue to make exceptions, and I still find myself 31 years into this practice having to uh, stop, take a breath, reset my boundaries, and make sure that I am maintaining those boundaries so that I do have some time on the weekend for myself and it's not built into work. Um, Making sure that the clients understand what the boundaries are. You have to reset them with the clients repeatedly sometimes, because oftentimes when these people are in the state of trauma that they're in, they're not hearing you when you're setting those boundaries. And when they push them and they push them, you need to bring them back and reset them again. Um, Office hours, same kind of thing. I don't answer my cell phone between the hours or before the hours of 9 o'clock unless I have a scheduled call, or after 5:30 time frame unless I have a scheduled call. The work calls just don't come in at that point in time. So I do think it's important, and I would absolutely advocate to anyone who's listening to not do what I have done, which is give my personal cell phone to clients in their practice. I think that it does create a boundary that is a problem with the client.
One of the suggestions in the Q&A is that the practitioner has a Google Voice number that goes to a personal phone, but all calls on that line, it's known, are work related. And so that helps set boundaries. I think Elena and Mary, is it fair in saying you just would like boundaries? As Rebekah has done, it's not that she's given her cell phone number, it's that she has set boundaries. Is that a fair statement?
That's a great thing to do. And I like that she does it early, or it's part of talking about it when the client comes in. And I agree, they probably won't remember all of that. But having some kind of straightforward understanding of your availability, what your role is with them. Um, Another thing that I would throw in is, and I'm not trying to push therapy for that everybody needs therapy. Actually, when people go through a divorce, that is one of the most common times people enter therapy because they are in trauma. But you can't be everything for this person, and they probably want you to. I think therapists have a term called transference, meaning people project onto you things that they want or need or see you in a certain way. And they are going to project onto their attorneys all kinds of uh, ideas that you're going to save them, that you're going to fight for them, that you're their champion, and also that people who don't want to be vulnerable or don't see themselves in the psychotherapy client role will want you to be their therapist. No, I don't need therapeutic help. You're my confidant. You're my consigliere, you know. So you can talk about, you've got more, you need to have somebody in your corner helping you with all this emotional stuff that's going on with you. And I'm going to be doing this part for you, and you need more. So that's one thing that I would suggest in terms of setting healthy client boundaries. You're not their therapist.
Well, and they do say, not only
Mhm.
do they think that you are their personal champion, they'll tell you, you're my
Mhm.
hero. You did something, you got me out of a relationship that I could never have gotten out of if it wasn't for you. And that, I mean, imagine that. And then you have to go
Yeah,
back into court the next day, and maybe you don't do so swell the next day because the
yeah,
issue is different.
yeah,
So they're not shy about how they
yeah.
feel about you.
Yeah, so check your own grandiosity, people, your own narcissist. It's nice when you are the loved object or you are the idealized object. Not so nice when suddenly you don't give them everything they want.
Well, I think a lot of us have a need. It's a human need to be liked.
Mhm.
And saying no creates a perception that you are disappointing
Mhm.
someone else. And I think lawyers in particular are vulnerable to that. How do we process that? Do you want to be liked, or do you want to be happy? Do we look at it that way? How do we process that?
I would I would go back to synonyms and change the wording a little bit.
Please.
we want to be in connection with someone, right? Which is very different. And then when you're connected with someone, you're still available and you're there, but you're still in your prefrontal cortex, which allows you to zoom out and to set that boundary, right? When we're engaged and they're telling you all their crises that they're going through, all your emotions are getting triggered and getting triggered and getting triggered. And if we don't stay in our connected boundary self, we can't access that rational thinking. So we want to be connected because we're humans, right? Or else you can't do your job. Then you're just robotic. So we want to maintain that connection, but with healthy boundaries. It is how I would shift it a little bit.
I think it's even more that, I mean, as you were talking about that, I think back to our role for those of us who do minors council work. So I think for some of us, it can be that basic wanting to do something, for someone because they're asking you. And you get the email from the judge's clerk that says, Judge so-and-so would really like you to come in and represent these children. They think that you're the perfect person to do it. Those are hard things to say no to, especially when you've got that backing of the court, who is they whatever the process is. Some counties do it different than others, but that is another that type of a boundary is really hard, I think, for family law practitioners as well, is being able to say no to commitments beyond even our own clients and taking on other things that the community, the family law community, may want us to do.
All right, in the last 3 minutes or so that we have, could we talk about some techniques that lawyers can employ? For example, I know we talked in our prep session that 2 minutes of meditation is just fine. It doesn't have to be 2 hours of meditation. 10 minutes of yoga may be good. In other words, bite-sized pieces for us to develop the habits that perhaps then maybe we can do them a little bit longer.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of great apps. Mary, I know you had talked about everybody has their own favorite apps. There's the Calm app, which is guides you through a lot of different things, Insight Timer. I always talk about mindful walking. I had a client that she walked to my office one time and I was like, oh, what did you see along the way? And she was like, what are you talking about? Nothing. She was so in her head, she started beeline. So mindful walking is enjoying the flowers, looking at people, looking up, feeling your feet. That's something that you could do for 2 minutes, right? Just walk outside. There's the Moongate app, which I like, which is not woo-woo. It is science backed. It is. It's I can never say the word, binaural beats. And it finds different frequencies that you can listen to that actually helps with nervous system and accessing rest and digest, parasympathetic nervous system, to help you slow down. And it's really lovely because it has you go through all these little questions and it finds the right one for you, which whatever resonates. And I like breath work. We know that breathing really helps us to slow down because it accesses the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. Stanford did a study in 2023, I want to say, where they looked at 4 different types of breath techniques. And some of these practices have been around for hundreds of years. So now they're getting the science behind it. And they found between sighing breathing, what they call cyclic breathing, box breathing, and cyclic, I forget what the other word was. They found that it's the 2 intake breath and the 1 slow exhale. And it's through the nose.
Slow.
That makes a difference. It's the 2 inhales through the nose and the exhale through the mouth.
And the Army uses this. The Army teaches Navy SEALs how to do it. I mean, because it works. They teach them all kinds of they teach them mindfulness techniques for how to go to sleep, all kinds of things. I want to put a plug in for the very rational among our audience that maybe you've heard of Stoicism. It's sort of having a big, it's popular right now. So these techniques have been, it's a philosophy. Stoicism is a lot about detaching. It's a lot about understanding that you can't control events. You can only control your attitude toward events, things like that. So this is not just an Eastern tradition, it's a Western tradition too. The logical, Western tradition, if that's what gets you plugged into it, it really can help to immerse yourself in that thinking as well. But don't forget all the body stuff, because that is so powerful. And Elena's explained it very well today, I think. And it instead of numbing, you become more aware. It can calm you and help you become more aware at the same time. And everybody, I think, my son, by the way, edits the wellness section of the New York Times, go New York Times. And it's a very that just read stuff like that. If you want to, there's so much popular information out there now about sleep, about exercise, uh, about doing some kind of personal self-improvement that is for your physical health. My husband is a psychologist and was a custody evaluator. He thinks I've had no success in getting him to do any of this stuff, but he loses himself in playing tennis, and that's his thing. That's where Rebekah lifts weights, he plays tennis, he's immersed in it. And he does it enough that I think, he escapes, or it's a wellness practice. And then the other thing is he practices mindlessness, where he just sits and looks into space. And I said, "You're doing it." I said, "What are you thinking about right now?" He says, "Nothing." I says, "Okay. That's what we're talking about. You're letting yourself just sit there and do nothing." So, if you don't want to do mindfulness, do mindlessness.
Suzanne, there are two questions in the Q&A. I'm thinking that Rebekah probably can manage both of those by email at a later time, because I see that we are just about 2 minutes past 1:30. So any wrap-up comments? Rebekah, anything that you want to add?
Just one little, there is a podcast, if anybody likes to listen to podcasts, that a colleague of mine through AML told me about, which is called The Wake Up Call for Lawyers. It's 20 minutes. It doesn't often have anything to do with law. What's interesting about it is you can put it on and you can sit outside for 20 minutes, and it just talks about things that are interesting to those of us who are lawyers. And so I think that that's a really good way to do that mindlessness that Mary is talking about. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is really important stuff, and it takes a while to get yourself to be able to do it. And we are not I mean, we sit up here on this panel, but we're not perfect. I'm certainly not perfect at this. But it is a learning experience, and we have to keep trying.
Well, please go ahead, Elena.
I want to do one last plug that
Please.
this really does matter. And I think we don't check on each other enough. And it comes at a consequence. I had a friend, a professional, who suicided 2 years ago. And these things are happening. We're not checking on each other enough. We're not having enough outlets. We're isolating. So in whichever way you can have an outlet or access any of these tools, please do it.
I want to give a plug for one of the slides, time management and arranging your office. I mean, organization and planning ahead and making sure that you do calendar those times that you have to take care of yourself is very important, because maybe that would help you if your staff understands, no, you don't interrupt me at that time of the day or something like that.
All right. Let me say thank you to these three remarkable professionals who gave so much time and effort to both preparing for our presentation today and to presenting. Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure. For all of you who attended today, thank you so much. We appreciate you. In the slides are far more specifics that you may wish to peruse and to use. And we thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.